Well, hello and welcome to the few final trading days of July right here in Lagos, Nigeria. We're going to get to the top stories that set your agenda. It's all about the planned protests at this point. We're going to be gauging how this is going to impact investor sentiment in this coming August. Definitely, we're going to also see how that's going to impact the markets. But let's get a check on the oil market now. First, the weekly performance. We saw last week Brent lost about 1.8%. While WTI, that dropped a big 3.7% last week. So definitely we saw the trades were tilted to the bearish side. That's for the oil market. But fast forward, today we're seeing kicking off with positive sentiment. $81.33 a barrel for Brent crude, 0.3% up this morning, $77.25 a barrel. That's for WTI crude. That's a U.S. grade. That got really cheap last week, but we're seeing an uptick to start the week. We'll see if we'll have a positive close for this week, looking at both markets. So 0.1% up, that's what we have for WTI starting this week. Let's look at other stories now. The FX, definitely FX market, another top topic at this time. We saw weakness last week. The Naira closed down on Friday, but there was an uptick in liquidity by about 5% for NAFEM, but we saw a big drop, 0.34% down. 1,603, now that was a previous trade, so we breached that 1.6 level. That was last week, so trading around that range, 1,550 to 1,600. So for NAFEX, 1,606 naira, that was the close on Friday, down a big 1.06%. So definitely we still see weakness despite interventions by the central bank. But we'll see how this week, how those interventions play into this week, and how the protests, the planned protest, is going to impact the Naira, because it impacts everything, at this point. But we're going to be talking about the benefits of protests and the cost at the same time. But let's look at earnings now. It's earnings season, a time where listed companies put out their financial reports. We have a lot of them. They were out last week, but we'll see Dangote Cement posted a pre-tax profit of about 293 billion in the 2024 half year, reflecting a 22% year-on-year growth from the 239.9 billion posted in the first half of 2023. So we'll see revenue up by 85% year-on-year. Production, cost of sales, we see that rose about 118%. All right, let's get a check on, let's see what's happening with Transcorp Power. They also posted their earnings. They posted a pre-tax profit of about 51 billion. That's a 214% year-on-year growth from the 16.2 billion naira posted in the first half of 2023. So we see revenue up by 142% year-on-year, 35.4 billion. Gross profit, that's up 136%. And foreign exchange gain, that's down about 123% year-on-year, about 1.1 billion naira there. So definitely we're going to be drilling down on what's driving sentiment with most of these earnings. That's on Business Incorporated later on. But other stories now, still looking at the protests. Telecommunication companies yesterday denied plans to frustrate the End Bad Governance protest scheduled between August 1st and 10th across the country, saying the social and economic contract they signed to provide services at all times will not allow them to do so. The denial followed the allegation by a prominent lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Ebolu Degburua, that telecommunication companies and telcos in the country are trying to frustrate the planned protest. So I guess the question now is, are customers with already NIN-linked lines being disconnected? I remember two of my colleagues actually complaining that they were disconnected at this point, and they had their NINs linked. So definitely we have to find out what's really going on at this time. But we've heard from the telcos. Now they're saying they're not trying to frustrate anything at this point. All right, let's go to our first conversation. One of the major issues with this planned protest, we know most of the major problems right now is high cost of living and high cost of petroleum products. And now Nigeria has has prospects of refining its own oil, but there seems to be issues around that. Let's discuss with Mr. Eche Doko, as a publicity secretary, Crude Oil Refiners Association of Nigeria. Join us from our Abuja studio. Great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Ladi. How are you?
All right, first, let me get your take on the planned organized protest and how you see it, impacting your sector. What would you say is the cost of a no protest and actually continuing, with status quo, at this time? Let me get your perspective on that first.
Okay, status quo for us in the oil and gas is to continue the regime of petroleum product importing. Status quo for us would mean that we have to expend our hard-earned efforts in trying to pay for importation of petroleum products. Status quo would mean that we would have to be at the whims and caprices of what happens in the external market without attention to the peculiarities of our market. And that's why we have been clamoring for a change to become a bit more Nigeria-centric with what we do within the oil and gas space, particularly the downstream. And CORAN has been championing the cause to push for domestic refining. And truth be told, we have in our own stride, with very little input from the government, been able to get refineries running. As we speak, we have about six of such refineries, 100% privately owned, running in Nigeria. And we have to do these things to stem the tide of things like this. Let's try to get products to the Nigerian market at a relatively affordable rate. Let us give a Nigerian face to the availability of energy. So that's what we stand for. I do think that if there is a way to address the high cost of things, government should do what is necessary to avoid the protest. But in this instance, things are quite tough out there, and the protest is just Nigerians registering the fact that things aren't going right. And we are saying, and like we always say to other stakeholders, let's all sit down together and find a way of cushioning the effect of the economic crunch on the Nigerian people.
Talking about cushioning the impact so far, we're seeing the queues are back at this time. This morning, I did see long queues, most of the filling stations on my way to work. And I don't know, we've heard from the NNPCL talking about some kind of glitch, at some point with the supply. But what are you seeing at this time causing this scarcity right now? We've seen that in Lagos and Abuja. Is it just plain old profiteering back again?
Well, that would be for the regulators to say. I'm not the regulator. But what I know is that what they have said, or they have admitted to you, like you had just said, is that they have glitches with the supply chain. And what domestic refining would do is that it is supposed to remove the complications around the supply chain, because it makes it simple. You have the refineries in country. You cut out the challenge of having to freight. You cut out the challenges of having to deal with delays at the ports and harbors. So it becomes more organized, and more importantly, you cut out the middlemen who are culprits in all this and decide to hide behind the curtains to orchestrate all sorts of confusion. Because how do you explain? And when products come to the tank farms, most of these end users, if you call anybody from Ipman now to tell you sincerely what he is going through, how much are they lifting products at the depot, you would see that it's actually something short of a miracle how they're able to sell at this regulated price. And what we're saying is that let's have some level of transparency. Let those who are the major marketers, those who are owners of tank farms, let them be circumspect, let them become more, more patriotic to the country and allow this system work. And it's the same thing that we have argued, that let's begin to practice backward integration in line with the provisions of the PIA for products that we already have self-sufficiency in country for instance, the AGO. And then let government become more bullish in its support for refineries in Nigeria to begin to produce and sell PMS. And to do this, we have to have some level of certainty and openness in the pricing regime and the distribution of and sales of PMS. Let the whole process of the regulation be altruistic.
All right, and definitely you did talk about optimism surrounding refining our own oil at this time, but there's still that new challenge at this point, that supply of crude to the refineries. We've seen the likes of Dangote Refinery talk about importing WTI for the refinery. So talk to me, is there a real risk at this point that even though we get these refineries running, we might not have crude to feed the refineries?
But interestingly, the PIA had taken care of what should be a challenge with respect to crude supply. And what it's lacking is the implementation. And like we have said over and over on this platform and many other media outfits, we appreciate the efforts that the NUPRC had put in place to make sure that provision of the PIA that guarantees crude for local refineries become activated. We had sat with them alongside the OPTS and other independents to make sure that we have a framework that would guide the supply of crude. But we haven't seen it implemented. We would want to ask the NUPRC and the Ministry of Petroleum to expedite action in gazetting that guideline so that it can come upstream, and then the provisions in there can begin to address the issues of crude supply so that local refineries can start having supplies. Because that guideline, I can tell you, a lot of inputs, a lot of stakeholders made inputs into that guideline. That's the domestic crude supply guideline. And it's supposed to an extent, address the issue of crude supply to local refineries. I want to see the implementation of this.
And when you talk about the refineries actually coming online fully at this time, do you think this will really guarantee affordable petroleum products in Nigeria?
Yes, if it will afford affordable petroleum products in Nigeria, if the provisions in the various guidelines are met, and if the government also and the regulators work with us. There are variables that affect pricing. FX is one of them. We have asked that that component of crude that comes to local refineries should be sold in Naira. There's no reason why we shouldn't be selling crude in Naira to an extent affect price. When we refine locally, we also cut out the issue of cost associated with freighting and logistics to also affect pricing. And we have also said that the government should also be practical with prices, fees, and taxes on locally refined products. Good thing, very soon we would be sitting with the NMDPRA to discuss licensing fees and charges, which, if we are able to reach when we reach an agreement, it would also affect whatever it is that's the cost price of petroleum products from the terminals, and this would also dovetail to whatever is sold at the pumps in the filling station. So yes, to your answer, if we begin to refine locally, we would see a lot of reprieves when it comes to pricing of petroleum products.
Right, and definitely Nigerians have a lot of demands right now for the government. Talk to me about what your industry is demanding from the government right now.
So we want the government to become Nigeria-centric when it comes to policies that have to do with the industry. I would say, like the Americans always say, America first. would say in formulating policies that governs the oil and gas sector, make Nigeria first. Let the interest of Nigerians and Nigeria be first above the merchants that trade with us. When you're making policies, let policies be such that would grow the domestic Nigerian oil and gas industry before we begin to look at what happens globally. And that's why we're saying that when you are formulating policies, let the policies have footprints that would benefit the local Nigerian economy.
All right, thank you so much for that. I guess the hashtag is Nigeria First. At this point, Mr. Eche Edoko is the Publicity Secretary, Crude Oil Refiners Association of Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, more conversations about affordable energy. What's the point of renewable energy? What's the impact? What impact could it have on bringing down these prices? All about dragging prices down, hopefully. That's our next conversation. Do stay with us.